proposed revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union. America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Our governing class has often been paralyzed. The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Bigotry seems emboldened. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another reading of Codeword Barbelon. Today is Chapter 31, The Revolutionary War, How America Became a Jesuit Enclave. And I'm joined here with Jörg from Belgium. Jörg?
Yes, Brett, I am here. And I'm very much eager to start, anxious to start this broadcast because this is something we talked about before. But as I just heard on the broadcast when we talked about that before, we did never read actually P.D. Stewart's. To our listeners to say, what am I speaking about? Well, when you go to the archives of Hour of the Truth, you will find episode 28 that was recorded on the 17th of September 2015, so some 2.5 years ago from here, and that broadcast was named Hour of the Truth, How America Became a Jesuit Enclave. And of course, dealing this reading of P.D. Stewart, but I don't think that we really did read into that. No, anyway, but we made a plus 2 hour long broadcast on that. And that was the very first time that Brett came on an Hour of the Truth. So that is about the time when I got to know him. So therefore, I started watching that video again. I'm only 10 minutes in. And now I'm really looking forward today to read about how America became a Jesuit enclave, even though I don't think that there is so many new things that we will learn about this, because I already commented a lot on the Jesuits behind the Revolutionary War in the United States of America, and called it like the Civil War that we were speaking of in the last broadcasts, just another crusade. A religious war that it actually was. But anyway, I'm sitting here. I'm very much enjoying sunshine for the moment. They haven't sprayed enough chemtrails yet to close the whole sky down.
Right.
But it's already getting overcast from all the chemtrails today. They really were spraying like crazy. But this morning we had a real blue sky, and my mother and I enjoyed a walk for an hour and a half. That was really fine. And now I still enjoy a little bit sunshine. So when my nose is getting to close down again, getting closed again, and I have trouble speaking, I will, don't wonder, persons, and I will just go out of my room and walk onto my terrace here and sit in the sun and read outside in the sun further instead of here inside of the room.
Right.
But for the moment, it's still all right. So that's all about me, Brett, over here in Europe, in the belly of the first beast of Revelation 13. How are you over there?
I'm doing well here in Romerica, man. Yeah, we really do have a quote unquote global Roman Empire still. Unfortunately, but it's whatever. It's just part of life. We're going to have to deal with it, get through this, and just hope we can, try and get through it together and cope with the problems. And it's all entirely different when you're seated with the Lord, and you use His Bible, and life makes a lot more sense when you have that manual, the instruction manual, right? From
All
our
of a
Lord,
sudden you have
from our Savior.
you have a whole other look on life anyway.
Oh, absolutely. So please, Yerk, don't let me slow you down. I'm ready.
Oh, you're not slowing me down, brother. I'm just
Good.
I just wanted to warm up and even tell the people that they could go to the archives on the playlist on Hour of the Truth and look up for episode 28 with the title "How America Became a Jesuit Enclave" to even get further information about what we are reading here today, because we spoke about that for more than 2 hours. I mean, it's an interesting broadcast. So
it is,
and
yeah.
Even though it is 2.5 years on YouTube, it has on my main channel only 1,026 views. So,
I think I have it up on my channel. It's got 600 views or something. So that's 1,800 views. That's not so bad.
1,600 then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No problem. And I probably have it on my second channel too, and there it has maybe 200 views or so also. But it's not about the views, but it's about getting the information out to the people. And the only thing why I am concerned about the views on my videos is really not because I'm getting famous or what. I don't get paid for it anyway. Because I don't earn money with YouTube. I forbid strictly advertisings and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I myself use ad block in all browsers that I use.
Right.
So I don't earn anything. But the point is that when I see that it gets a lot of views, I see that a lot of people are getting that information. What they are doing with that information is even of less importance. But I know that the information has gotten out.
Mm-hmm.
And with some people it just takes a day or two. With some people it takes a month or two. With other people it takes a year or two. That they reflect on that information that they got there, and all of a sudden there is a seed going up, and people are coming to a knowledge and wisdom and truth that they have never come before. And that's why I'm spreading all these seeds. That's why you do that with your fantastic video you uploaded 2 days ago or whatever.
Yes, that's right. That's right. It's about, just trying to get active and doing a little something, even if it's just a little something. It's something.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
No, I just want to say that because people often hear me talk about the views. It's not about, I'm not doing that to get famous or whatever or whatever.
Oh, no,
I'm not interested in that. But it's about the information that needs to get out.
Yes, it is. And I looked on the analytics last night for the first time, Yerk, and I was amazed at how few young people look at my videos. It's all people, mainly our age. In the early 50s, late 40s. That's it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I mean, the information is just so overwhelming, Yerk.
Yeah, and it always depends on what is the first part of information that gets to you. Where do you start with? With me, it was 9/11. With some other people, it is maybe about the betrayal they have when they go into the shop and they buy their food and they see how they are betrayed, that they are actually buying poisoned nutrition.
Oh yeah.
With somebody else, it is again something else, something maybe they even catch on TV because they have a glitch there, and for 2 seconds they speak kind of a truth that somebody awakens and says, "What was that?" I mean, it's you never
like
know
the
where
Matrix
to find this.
Kind of starting to be reality. It's like, wow, you got to be kidding. So
you never
strange.
know. You never know where the truth hits you for the first.
No.
And that's why I always pray that our work that we are doing here, reading P.D. Stewart's book, Codeword Barbelon, or doing other things together, or even I doing my projects alone and you are doing your projects alone.
Sure.
Every time we do that, we hope and we pray that someone else will wake up to the reality and start to see the world for what it really is, and then come to the correct conclusion and turn away from the world and turn to the Bible and turn to Jesus Christ and find their heavenly solution and their eternal life with our Lord Jesus Christ, because that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Here on earth, we are all only temporary. We are only for a moment, for a glimpse. I mean, in the glimpse of eternity, this life is nothing. But in this nothing, we have to try to make it something. And we can only
good
do that.
point.
We can only try to do that with the help of the Lord and the help of the Holy Spirit. And for that, without any more delay, I will lead you into the next reading of the book Codeword Barbelon, 636, Danger in the Vatican, the Sons of Loyola and their Plans for World Domination. As Brett already announced, we have already come to chapter 31 on page 305 in this book, if you have your own copy and want to read along. That is called The Revolutionary War, How America Became a Jesuit Enclave. And it starts with two quotes from former US President John Adams in 1816. The first one reads, quote, "A most colossal conspiracy against the United States." And the second one, probably more known, more famous than that first one, "I do not like the resurrection of the Jesuits." We now come to another highly interesting portion of American history, which you would be hard-pressed to find in the history books. The part played by the Jesuits in the American Revolutionary War, i.e. the War of Independence between 1776 and 1783. We have seen the role of the Jesuits. Okay. I have to make a comment. I have to make a comment here.
Please.
Sorry. Already this early in the reading, but this is one of the things that really startled me when I read Rulers of Evil. Quite at the end of the book of Rulers of Evil, Tapasosi comes to the conclusion that says, whenever you want to start a new government and you start that government on a bloody revolution, you can never expect that government to be Christian-like, Christ-like. So the United States of America was founded with the Revolutionary War. Blood was shed. How can you expect a revolutionary or a revolution that sheds the blood of man to then establish a government that is absolutely Christ-like? That's the point that Tapasosi made at the end of his book in Rulers of Evil. And ever since then, I really understood it. And that's why I always say...
Oh, man. Isn't that the truth? And then you add on top of that all of the other atrocities that happened before that. I mean, America has been a bloodbath. In the beginning, of course. But, we don't talk about that much here in America,
Oh, I mean, we are taking now the example of the American Revolutionary War, the War of Independence. But you can also take, for example, the revolution in Russia in 1917. You can take any kind of revolution anywhere as you want, because all these revolutions are together with bloodshed. It's not a coup d'état. All these like the French Revolution. How could you expect from the French Revolution, where the blood was flowing in masses, even in the River Seine in Paris, that the River Seine was colored red? How can you expect from that to come a government that can be Christ-like? Yeah? And I just want to turn our listeners to read again the last few chapters of Rulers of Evil from, I think, chapter 22 or 23 on. It has 25 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. And search for that and read that there for yourself. He comes to that conclusion, and the way that he comes to that conclusion I find very intriguing and very true. And now when I read here, of course, about the American Revolutionary War, I can think of just what Tapasosi said there. So when you start your government, a new country, you want to start anew, and you start that with a revolution, you start that with bloodshed, there can never come out of it a real Christ-like government. Sorry, I had to cough here.
That's right.
Sip a glass of water, I'm sorry.
No problem.
But anyway, I don't want to even go more into that, but please do your own research. Get this book, Rulers of Evil. Have a look at the last chapters there, because that's a book that you don't have to read from the first to the last chapter. Tapasosi says to himself. You can read it here apart and there apart. Take the last chapters and read that for yourselves, and maybe you will understand and come to the same conclusion also. I mean, Jesus didn't start a bloody revolution when he was on the earth, and he established the kingdom of God, did he?
Yeah.
But that's what they all wanted from him. They all expected from Jesus to do that and to go against the Romans and to set Judah free again. That's what they expected, and because they didn't get what they expected, they rather saw him crucified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so continue in the book. We have seen the role of the Jesuits in the American Civil War, but what part, if any, did they play in the earlier war that transformed America from a collection of independent states into a United States of America? The uniformed or partisan historians will tell us that this war was mainly, if not entirely, due to the arbitrary and intolerable acts of the British government, leading to the American colonists' desire to break with the British rule. How did Charles Carroll frame the phrase at that time? No taxation without representation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the rules behind, or one of the reasons behind, the Revolutionary War at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Charles Carroll was a Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic. I will now venture to shed some light on this dimly reported aspect of American history and offer you a very different, and we hope more correct view. That religion played a major role in the American Revolution is beyond any dispute. In 1776, at the time of the Declaration of Independence, there were little over 25,000 Catholics in all of the 13 colonies, 1% of the 2.5 million total population. There were only 23 priests in all, and the next highest authority was the Vicar Apostolic in London, who had jurisdiction over the British colonies and satellites in America. The American Revolutionary War of Independence soon changed that. The reason there were so few Catholics and so many more Protestants was because the foundation of the great democracy that is today called the United States of America was laid when millions of European Protestants fled the oppression of the Catholic Church in Europe to seek freedom of conscience and freedom of religion in the mostly uninhabited wilderness of North America. In the main, the settlers were resolved not to duplicate in the New World what they had fled from on the Old Continent. These settlers felt that the Pope, as a foreign ruler, should not be allowed to meddle in the politics or laws of America, as they suspected that would render it difficult for immigrants, especially Catholics, to be fully loyal to their new country and to its fledgling Republican values. Now I can't help to even make a little excursion here into the book, mentioned it again, and Tom Fress' wonderful reading of that book of 2010, The Ark and the Dove. If you want to really understand how the Jesuits built the foundation of the United States of America before 1776, how they did that politically, then you really have to read that book.
Oh, yeah.
The Ark
I just started that, Jurgen, and I know Tom was talking about Robert Bellarmine in there. That's really
and liberation theology.
Yes.
You know, we are speaking here, and this is, I think, an important point, a point also that is made in the Ark of the Dove, of course, because the Ark and the Dove is a book written by a Roman Catholic for Roman Catholics, so you have to be very vigilant when you read that to not misunderstand the book, okay? But the point that is made here is that the first settlers were European Protestants that fled the oppression of the Catholic Church. So there also came some Roman Catholics over from Europe to the United States of America, to the colonies at that time, because they were quote-unquote persecuted. Now, let me tell you one thing about the persecution of Catholics. the way the Protestants were persecuted in Europe, not only in the time of the founding of the colonies, meaning the discovery, quote unquote, discovery of America in 1492 and until the Revolutionary War of 1776, but even hundreds of years before, during that time, and hundreds of years after that, still are being persecuted. The Protestants were persecuted through the Inquisition. They were persecuted. They were their belongings were confiscated. They couldn't give any heritage to their family. When they possessed the Bible was burned. They were burned along with the Bible. They were tortured in dungeons. They were flayed. They were hanged. They were boiled. They were tortured in ways that you cannot even imagine. The human mind, especially the mind of the devil, is very, very inventive when it comes to torturing people. And this is the persecution the Protestants fled from Europe to this new world. But there were Catholics who said all of a sudden, oh, but we are also persecuted because we cannot hold our Mass anymore. The Roman Catholic faith is suppressed now, and we cannot have the Eucharist anymore, and we cannot hold our Mass, and we cannot use our indulgences, and then all that superstitious stuff of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's why Roman Catholics fled countries like Ireland and like England. You know, you have to understand Ireland. Make yourself known with the story of Thomas Cromwell, I think was his name. And you understand that a little bit. And of course, in England, during the reign of Elizabeth, which was a Protestant reign, and then afterwards the reign of James I of England and the second of Scotland, the guy who gave us, or the king who gave us the King James Bible, they were Protestants, and they, of course, suppressed the superstitious Roman Catholic religion. And therefore, the Roman Catholics said, oh, we have to flee here, and we have to go into a country where there is, quote unquote, freedom of religion. It was never the idea to give freedom of religion to the colonies. It was the idea to give freedom of conscience. And the Roman Catholic does not have a freedom of conscience, because when you're a devout Roman Catholic, you have your conscience sold to the Pope. And your first allegiance is with the Pope in Rome. So this is an oxymoron, actually.
Yes,
it
really is.
But they also went over, and not only from England and Ireland, but probably also from Germany and Netherlands, because there were also probably some quote-unquote persecuted Catholics. But our readers have to understand that never, ever in a Protestant country a Roman Catholic was persecuted because of his belief. They were only persecuted because of the treason they planned, the conspiracies they enacted, like we read about in the Bering plot and the Gunpowder plot and the Spanish Armada and all that stuff that we read about. That's because Roman Catholics were persecuted, but that is in no way comparable to the persecution and the torture and the suffering Protestants had to go through. I just want to mention that because we are speaking here about, there were only 25,000 Roman Catholics in the colonies. I read a statistic where it was about 1.8% Catholics in 1776, 0.2 Jews, and 98% Protestants in the time of 1776. And just to explain to you why that is, because, of course, why would a Roman Catholic flee from Europe and go to the United States of America, where he knows that all the Protestants goes to? So when he thinks that he is persecuted by the Protestants, I would not go into a country that is being erected by the Protestants. Would you, Brett?
No.
So they had to have an ulterior motive when they went there, right?
Sure.
And we should never forget that Roman Catholics also always have an ulterior motive, and that ulterior motive is their first allegiance they pay to the Pope.
That's right.
So I don't want to go too far
Yes,
away
their
from
obligation.
the reading.
Their
Yeah,
obligation.
the obligation. Yes, I don't want to go too far away from the reading here, but you have to understand that these settlers, these Protestants who were persecuted for their lives, not only they themselves, but also their wives, their children, their fathers, their mothers, their brothers, their sisters, their friends, their whole families were threatened with their very life. Yeah, they had a reason really to flee Europe and come to the new colonies. And these settlers felt that the Pope, as a foreign ruler, should not be allowed to meddle in the politics of laws in America, as they suspected that would render it difficult for immigrants, especially Catholics, to be fully loyal to their new country and its fledgling Republican values. And I'm going to go a little bit into history that is not in this book written here, but that you can read from things like in the Ark and the Dove and Global Vatican and all the other teachings also Tom Friess did in the past. You have to understand that these Roman Catholics were always there with a goal, and they hid themselves. I mean, the founding of the of the Roman Catholics in America are not Roman Catholics; they were American Catholics. It is a very, very special story, and you can read all about that in the book *The Ark and the Dove*. But I'm probably getting a little bit too far along here, so I better continue reading in this book.
Keep going, yeah.
Yeah. So the author continues to say, naturally, there was a fear of Roman Catholics, not unlike the fear many Americans today have of Muslim fundamentalists. After all, these early Protestant pilgrims had recently escaped the hands of their Catholic compatriots. In those days, people took their Catholicism seriously. So much so that several states passed laws regulating the activities of Roman Catholics. For example, in 1647, a Massachusetts statute declared that every priest was a, quote, incendiary and disturber of the public peace and safety and an enemy of true Christian religion, unquote. Imagine that today. Yeah? That you can make a statute in your state and say in there that a Roman Catholic is an incendiary and disturber of the public peace and safety and an enemy of true Christian religion. The early American settlers,
that's a real Protestant statement there, isn't it?
That's a real Protestant statement.
Wow, powerful.
The early American settlers suspected that the Pope was seeking to meddle in the affairs of the United States, to undermine its Republican values, which they said was evidenced by the oath that every Catholic bishop was required to take. Quote, I will, to the utmost of my power, seek out and oppose schismatics, heretics, and the enemies of our sovereign Lord, the Pope, and his successors. Unquote. However, the period following the restoration of the Jesuits in 1814 saw a tremendous growth in the numbers and influence in America, as evidenced by the large number of Jesuit colleges and universities established on that continent in that century, 22 of the Society's 28 universities. Says historian René Fulop Miller, quote, in those days, one of Benjamin Franklin's friends was a Jesuit. This was John Carroll, who had been brought up in Maryland of Irish parentage. He would later become the Archbishop of Baltimore and go to establish the Jesuit University of Georgetown in a suburb of the city of Washington, the federal capital, the first Catholic educational institution in the United States. Unquote. According to Robert Emmett Curran, in his The Bicentennial History of Georgetown University, the Society of Jesus resolved in 1786 to found Georgetown to supply for Catholics in the new republic the clergy whom the society had provided previously. Unquote. John Carroll was born in 1735 at Upper Marlboro, Maryland. After receiving a Jesuit education at Bohemia in Cecil County, Maryland, Carroll studied abroad at Jesuit colleges in Europe. First and for all, he studied in St. Omer's, which was in Flanders, here in what is today called Belgium. but today it is northern France. It's in Nord-Pas-de-Calais, in the neighborhood of Bretagne. And he studied, or he was educated, Jesuit educated there for 26 years. He came over as a boy, if I'm not mistaken, 13 or 11 years old. Yeah. He was forced to flee Europe when the Jesuits were expelled from Sweden under the decree of Pope Clement in 1773. And on August 15th in 1790, Reverend John Carroll was appointed the first Catholic bishop in the United States of America, being consecrated on the Feast of the Assumption. August 15th, Assumption of Mary. At the time, the papacy not only had to deal with the concerns of Americans that these revolutionary Jesuit outcasts were migrating to America, it also had to quell the fears of the American people that the Catholic Church in America was itself no more than a Trojan horse for the installation of a foreign ruler, the Pope. To overcome these suspicions, the Jesuit John Carroll advised the Pope to have the portion of the oath which required allegiance to the Pope above all others removed from the American bishop's pledge. This was done to avoid giving offense to the principles of the Constitution and to calm fears that the Catholic bishops were merely puppets of the Pope on American soil.
Ooh.
And I can't help to make another little comment here.
Ooh,
What I just read here, Tom Friess is going into very, very deep in the latter part of the book, The Ark and the Dove, book 3, you know?
Yeah.
The Ark and the Dove consists of 3 books. The sowing or the preparing of the ground, the sowing or the planting, and then the harvest. And that latter part, the harvest, you can actually read the correspondence that John Carroll has with the Vatican at that time, telling the Pope, in my words now, Pope, we don't need a Roman Catholic Church here in the United States of America because then we will be crushed by Protestants and we can never develop and we can never fulfill our plans. We need an American Catholic Church. We need a Catholic Church that is not Roman. So we need, as P.D. Stewart said here already, take away the required allegiance to the Pope of everybody who is going to join within the American Catholic Church. But no, Pope, of course, that of course we are paying our allegiance to you. Yeah? But we cannot do that openly, because if we do that openly, we will be crushed. And therefore, I have to repeat myself. This book, The Ark and the Dove, especially the latter parts, are so important to be understood for an American reader. John Carroll was the first American Catholic bishop. He was the founder of the first diocese in Baltimore in, if I'm not mistaken, 1808. And for that, the Pope Benedict XVI paid a visit to the United States of America in 2008. And on that I have videos on my channel, Tom Friess explaining the reason why the Pope came over and what was it all about, especially when they played the pipe and drum corps. Yeah?
Yeah, that's the video. I'm trying to think of the title right now, and it's just not quite there. I made a banner for it in that latest video. I put it up. Oh yeah, Tom Friess is exposing the how America, you know, I can't think of it. Why is that?
Let me just continue my comment and reading, and you look it up in the meantime.
Thanks.
Then you will come and tell us when you found it.
Yeah.
But Tom Friess did a video on that, and I have that on my channel. I don't know if Brett has it uploaded
I got
on his
it up.
channel.
Absolutely
and,
right.
I have it at least on. I think I have it on all 3 channels already. This video about the Pope's visit of 2008, and that's very important to understand. This John Carroll, was a neighbor and a friend of George Washington. and he founded Georgetown University. Why do you think it was called Georgetown when your first president is called George Washington? Yeah. And that was founded as a boys' school, yeah, as an as a how do you say that, a boarding school for young boys.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that's how Georgetown started. And
was it there's some boys' town or something? Yeah, I think you said, yeah. I forget the name of that.
That's also something else.
That's something else, but yeah, it's
that Boys Town is something else again. But
yeah,
anyway.
It's Tom Fress on the Papal Takeover of America. Nothing But the Truth 2015. That's the video up on my channel. Yep.
That's it. Yeah, that's the one.
Fantastic exposure that Tom did there.
Yeah, maybe you should take a note, Brett, that you put the link into that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I should be putting that link in every video we do anyway.
And our truth also, how America became a Jesuit enclave, that you put a link into this video when you upload this, what we are reading here right now.
Good enough. So that I should be able to pick that up when I listen to this, when I make the video.
So that people have that for their own research available when they want to. You know?
Right, exactly.
So, okay, I'm not...
Especially for our new listeners that may have never, ever heard about any of this before, you know? We're here to serve you, you know? We need to help you get started on your journey. And it's a long journey, Yerk. Oh, my.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It really is.
People just have to understand that the quote-unquote founding fathers, call no man your father. But
that's right, call no man your father.
On earth, at least. Mm-hmm. But that these so-called founding fathers were not Jefferson and Washington and Paine and I don't know.
Sure.
I always forget a few of these names.
Oh, sure.
But the real founding fathers were Daniel Carroll, Charles Carroll, and John Carroll.
That's right.
Oh?
Yeah. John's the most famous of all of them, but yeah, you never hear about Daniel Carroll, Charles Carroll at all. Hardly.
Especially Charles Carroll is very unknown.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And Daniel Carroll also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel Carroll, by the way, was the owner of that piece of ground where today stands your Capitol. Did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The Intolerable Acts, the author continues on page 307 in the book. In order to archive the objectives of the Roman pontiff, in order to achieve the objectives of the Roman pontiff, the Jesuits, aided by their illuminated Masonic vassals in America, instigated the American War of Independence. Leading Masonic authors openly claim that Freemasonry had a preponderant role in the movement for independence. The Masonic Review of 1893 goes as far as to state that Freemasonry was the driving force in the formation of the American Union in 1776, claiming that at least 52 out of the 56 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence as members of the lodge, Charles Carroll, John Carroll's brother, was a signer. By encouraging Britain to effect, and by the way, I have I've stumbled on a book about this time that is interesting to read. I got it as a free PDF. You know, Brett, I told you about the video that I was watching, this 3-hour-long video.
Mm-hmm.
You remember a day or two ago?
Oh, yes, I do. Now I do, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in that video, there's the mentioning of a book that is called Proofs of a Conspiracy Against the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in the secret meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and reading societies, collected from good authorities, written by John Robeson, published in 1798. This is a book. The PDF has 412 pages, and I advise everybody to get along and get that book. You can download it for free on the internet and read that. And there you will see that when we are talking here about the Freemasons, that never to forget, of course, behind the Freemasons were the Illuminati, that were the Jesuits at that time, who were officially abandoned, abolished, but they hid under another mask. as we read already before in one of the chapters here, behind 1,000 masks, Loyola's offsprings and their agents. Remember? It's always the Jesuits. Well, you can say that I am crazy and Brett is crazy and we see a Jesuit behind every stone. Yeah, but that's because there is a Jesuit behind every stone.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you do your own research, the more you will understand that for yourself. So the driving force for the formation of the American Union, where it was claiming that at least 52 out of the 56 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence as members of the Lodge, Charles Carroll, John Carroll's brother, was a signer. Have you ever heard of Charles Carroll in your school teaching history of the United States of America coming into existence, dear listener? I guess not. And that's what these lessons, what these readings are all about. That you get a real understanding of history. That when you understand real history, you understand the present that you are in today. By encouraging Britain to effect into legislation a series of unreasonable and quote-unquote intolerable acts, the name given by American patriots to 5 laws adopted by the British Parliament in 1774, what a coincidence that it comes in that time, 1774, eh? The secret operatives helped create a state of deep resentment and rebellion in the hearts of the American colonists. One such intolerable act was a new government tax scheme on imports of tea. This is what happened behind the scenes. 2 Scottish Rite Freemasons, Paul Revere and another Masonic brother, Joseph Warren, one of George Washington's generals, by the way, were members of the oldest lodge in America, St. Andrew in Boston. George Washington himself was initiated into the Fredericksburg Lodge in 1752. This Boston Lodge was based in the Green Dragon Tavern, remembered by some as the quote-unquote headquarters of the American Revolution. The Boston Tea Party operated from that lodge. The Boston Tea Party opposed the new tax on tea imports and employed various means of civil and criminal disobedience, including the blocking of non-British ships to port. Taposauci has a very interesting chapter on that. He calls it the stimulating effects of tea in his book, Rule of Evil. Yeah?
That's right.
Have a little read on that.
That's a good one.
Next, the British Parliament passed the Stamps Act, considered by the American colonists as another intolerable act. But by far the worst and most notable of these intolerable acts was the Quebec Act, passed on May 20th, 1774. It received the royal accent on June 22nd, 1774, which attempted to cede all of the territory west of the Appalachian Mountains and north of the Ohio River to Canada, which at that time was essentially Catholic Quebec. In particular, the legislation purported to extend the Catholic province of Quebec south and west to the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, and into western colonies of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Virginia, taking land that many Protestant colonists had already claimed. That this was a deliberately provocative act, the legislative extension to the province of Quebec into so large an era of what was to become the United States, is seen from the fact that Quebec, Canada's largest province, is 3 times the size of France and 7 times the size of Great Britain. Thus, the Catholics of Quebec had more than ample land to expend within Quebec, plus the vast expanse that is Canada. Further, and curiously, the Quebec Act of 1774, quote-unquote, established Catholicism as the official religion in what was at the time the British colony of Canada. And in conformity with the practice in Catholic countries of the day, it provided for trials without a jury, denied representative assembly, The simultaneous passage of the Quebec Act and the coercive acts by the British Parliament led the colonists to angrily declare that the Quebec Act an immoral pact between Britain and Popery. Huh? The Quebec Act is an immoral pact between Britain and Popery. So Protestant Britain had conspired together with the Pope against the colonists of the United States of America to become. That's what we actually read here. Yeah? And my nose is really getting close. I gotta go.
Yes.
I gotta go outside now.
Sure.
Enjoy myself there.
Let's hope I don't lose you. Get a little noise, that's okay, no problem. That's typical.
No, you won't lose me, because actually I'm just 40 centimeters away from my chair on the inside, on the outside
Okay,
here.
good.
So
That's
I can
not
even see
far at all.
my computer. I can even see my computer screen.
Yeah, it's just when you're walking to that point, there's a little noise, but no big deal.
Yeah, but my nose will be much better here outside in the fresh air. So
yeah, great. So the bottom paragraph on page 308, right?
Yes. What is surprising about this is that the British, who were supposed to be Protestants, included a provision in the Act expressly providing for Canada to remain under the exclusive control of the Roman Catholic religion, and this provision was to apply to the newly ceded territory, i.e., all of the territory west of the Appalachian Mountains and north of the Ohio River. The terms included the stipulation that, quote, the exercise of the Catholic, Apostolic, and Roman religion shall be maintained, unquote. This was most curious coming from a supposedly Protestant power. The British American colonists, mostly Protestants, were naturally outraged, declaring the law to be one of the most intolerable acts of the British Parliament. Historian Martin Griffin writes that it caused a good deal of patriotic indignation and was widely considered by people on both sides of the Atlantic to have contributed in no small part to the Revolution of 1776. The American colonists lambasted the Quebec Act, denouncing it and the attendant French alliance as a dagger aimed at the heart, as a betrayal of their religious heritage and a Trojan horse. The colonists issued an, quote, address written to the people of England, unquote, in which they expressed our astonishment that a British Parliament should ever consent to establish in that country, meaning Canada, a religion that has deluged your island in blood and dispersed impiety, bigotry, persecution, murder, and rebellion through every part of the world. Indeed, we must question and regard as very suspicious indeed the eagerness shown by a Protestant king, George III, to thus favor the Catholic faith in one of its Protestant colonies with so gracious a grant of American territory to Roman Catholics. Let me just tell you, again referring to the book Rulers of Evil, King George III was a very, very weak king. And England at that time was mainly ruled through the friends of the kings. And those were all Freemasons. Of course, Jesuit controlled. So King George really was not a very good king for the country that he ruled over, England, at that time. Another of the intolerable acts, the author continues, was the early Quartering Act of March 24, 1765, under which the king sent large numbers of British troops to Boston and then demanded that colonists must house them in private homes if necessary and feed them too. And if they did not do so, they would get shot. The reader will recognize that these acts served no useful purpose to the crown and were clearly inflammatory acts, meant to provoke a radical response from the colonists, as they certainly did. It had been said that these intolerable acts were orchestrated by the agency of Jesuits in England, who had the ear of the king. Well, I just tell you? Huh?
Jeez.
Do you doubt this? Read again this part, Jesuit Oath of Induction. See again, chapter 7. Quote from the oath. You have been taught to insidiously plant the seeds of jealousy and hatred between states that were at peace, and incite them to deeds of blood, involving them in war with each other, and to create revolutions and civil wars in communities, provinces, and countries that were independent and prosperous, and enjoying the blessings of peace. Unquote. You know, nothing may be prosperous in this world except the Roman Catholic Church. So when there ever is a country, a province, or a state, or whatever that is prosperous, the Jesuits will come in and see to destroy that prosperity and give all the glance only to the Roman Catholic Church. That's what they do. That's what their motto is. Ad majorem Dei gloriam, to the greater glory of God. But they are, of course, referring to the God of this world and his vicar, Satan, and the Antichrist, the Pope in Rome. If you don't understand that, if you are still deceived by Jesuitical or other lies of a future of whatever Antichrist, and you don't understand that the papacy is the Antichrist, then listening to any more of this book reading is futile for you anyway. You really have to understand what I just read here. Now, in 1768, no less personage than Samuel Adams himself recognized this fact when he said, quote, I did verily believe, as I do still, that much more is to be dreaded from the growth of popery in America than from the Stamp Act or any other act destructive of civil rights. Unquote. Adams even suggested in the same speech that Rome had a hand in the Stamp Act. Nay, I could not help fancying that the Stamp Act itself was contrived with the design only to inure the people to the habit of contemplating themselves as the slaves of men, and the transition thence to a subjection to Satan, a reference to Rome, of course, is mighty easy. The transition thence to a subjection to Satan is mighty easy. Unquote. And President John Adams is reported to have asked the papal admirer Thomas Jefferson, quote, can free government possibly exist with the Roman Catholic religion? Unquote. Well, that question can be answered today very easily, because in 1864, Pope Pius IX, Pio IX, published his Syllabus of Errors, where he expressly condemned every kind of free government that can, of course, not coexist with the Roman Catholic religion. In 1775, the author continues, all of these quote-unquote intolerable and bizarre acts by the British Crown conspire to transform this conflict into an important historical event. In response to the outcry against the Quebec situation, the Continental Congress of the American colonies sent troops to quote-unquote liberate Quebec from Catholic control. But Colonel Brigadier General Benedict Arnold failed in his mission at the assault of the Sault au Matelot barriers in the winter of December 31st, 1775. Curiously, Arnold also sent a mission to recover Quebec from Catholic control, appointed a French Catholic priest from Quebec, Father Eustache Lotbinière, as chaplain to the 1st Regiment on January 26th in 1776. In any event, General Arnold, or Benedict, having failed in his Quebec mission, the Continental Congress sent a diplomatic mission to Canada to negotiate terms of peace. Included in that mission were Samuel Chase, Benjamin Franklin, and the prominent Roman Catholic Charles Carroll, 26 years Jesuit trained. When Franklin and Charles Carroll went to Montreal on behalf of Congress in April 1776, they took with them Carroll's brother, a Jesuit priest, the aforementioned John Carroll. Whoever seeks to explain the American reversal on the Catholic question must look at what happened in Quebec and the significant role played by the wily Jesuit John Carroll. This second mission, like the first, was a failure. However, it marked another important milestone in the turnaround of American opinion about Catholicism. For not long after, George Washington issued strict orders banning anti-Catholic sentiment and rhetoric, and a prohibition against Pope's Day celebrations was imposed to avoid offending Catholic. At the time, Pope's Day held in memory of the 1605 Jesuit plot to blow up the English Parliament. In the end, after attempts at peace over Quebec failed, the colonists went to war against the British.
That's
I think
good
we have
one.
quite come to a full hour, right, Brett?
Oh, yeah, I guess we have already, getting close at least. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it would be nice to save the last few pages on this subject,
Good.
on the
Yes,
Revolutionary
very
War,
well,
for
Jörg.
another broadcast.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely right. This would be a good time to end it.
I think that was quite a bunch of information that people have to swallow, especially when they are not that used to study the subject as we are. So
yeah, George Washington issued strict orders banning anti-Catholic sentiment and rhetoric. Wow.
Yeah. He's the one who abolished to burn the Pope in effigy on the remembrance of the 5th of November in 1605.
On American soil,
in remembrance of the gunpowder plot.
Oh, we can't have any real Protestantism here in this country now, can we?
No, surely not. When even your very first president already did this pro-Catholic law, you know.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is how history is. It's just a twisted mess of all kinds of things going on, Jörg. Just wow. I mean, it just in right about this time, you know, you're approaching the French Revolution, and there's a lot of things going on in the world, you know, back then.
Yeah, back then.
Back then.
The world always had interesting times since the time of the Reformation.
Oh,
because
bloodshed
that was
like crazy.
Because that was a time when people broke away from the yoke of Rome.
Yeah, that's it.
That was ruling the people for 1260 years, as we know biblically, of course.
Yeah, that's right.
And all of a sudden, the light came into the world, the light in the form of the words of Jesus, the Bible, that the people could study the Bible for their own, and that all of a sudden they understood we don't need a king that is on the strings of the Pope in Rome. We don't need the Pope as the high priest. We already have a high priest, which is Jesus Christ, and we already have a king, which is Jesus Christ. So we don't need the whole organization of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's what took away the power from him. But you know, Satan promised the Pope that if he will fall down and worship him, that he would give him all the nations, all the kingdoms of the earth. So Satan has to work to give this back to the Pope, of course.
Right. Yeah. It comes pretty easy then.
Yeah,
that's the weird thing about it. You know, the people are taken by however that biblical principle works again, the strong delusion, I guess, or however it works, I forget. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I hear some birds out there, Jörg.
Oh yeah, there are birds chirping outside here. My dog is lying here between my legs and wiggling his tail and wants to get caressed and played with and, you know, and caressed. Yeah, Lena? Yeah.
Yeah, I got my
I'm
cat sitting
I'm
here
sitting
by
out
the
here
window
on the
too.
terrace and seeing birds walking over the green and having a look at my new planted apple tree here. So I'm
Nice.
going to enjoy myself a little bit now after this reading, and then in a few hours, when the sun is getting down, I will enjoy my Sabbath too. So
Oh yeah, that's coming up real soon here, isn't it?
yeah, it's coming up real soon.
Yeah.
So let's just say goodbye to our listeners and viewers of this video of today's reading of the Codeword Barbelon book from P.D. Stewart, The Revolutionary War, How America Became a Jesuit Enclave, that they already have had a little bit a deeper insight into the Jesuit and by that Roman Catholic involvement in the founding of the United States of America by even starting the Revolutionary War. Because that is a war that nobody of the colonists ever wanted if you ask them. But that was just forced onto them.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the wars, like all the things are forced from top to bottom. Huh?
Yep. Oh, there was this reading that someone did years ago in America here or somewhere. I think it was in Boston or something on this little what would you say, a speech or something called "All Wars Are Bankers' Wars." Well, I just think no, it's all wars are religious wars.
Yeah, that's right.
Not bankers' wars. It only appears that way.
Yeah, but because religion is taken out of the lives of people, they don't understand that the religion plays any role today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are
Even
a few
though,
that do, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, a few.
Yep.
A few always get the idea that's behind the scheme, but most of the people are betrayed, and they don't have any idea. They just believe that the people are that soldiers are fighting for the reasons they tell them in mainstream media.
Oh,
And in mainstream
man. Isn't
media,
that
they
the
never
truth?
speak about religious wars, do they?
Yeah, no.
No.
Never enters the mind because well, it's this is a very strong delusion that's going on. It's got a lot of people, So I guess that's all I got too, and I'll say bye-bye.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye to the listeners, and until next time, and we continue and probably finish this chapter 31 in the book Codeword Barbelon. And until then, take care, and may God bless you. Maranatha.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control a million people. Literally, it was easier to control a million people than physically to kill a million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill a million people than to control a million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. And I believe that we've come horribly off track in the years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And we're starting now in the 21st century, which I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism.
His son Jesus is here in our midst. His bride, the church, is honored to host an event affirming the dignity of the human person and the sacredness of all human life.
I think Russia is no longer a communist state, first of all. That's very important to realize. It hasn't yet defined itself, however, effectively as a democracy. It is still uncertain.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,025 years.
You didn't mention the president by name, but it was hard not to conclude that that's who you were referring to. Is that fair?
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things and aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history, and I'm for maintaining it.
We are grateful to be citizens of one nation under God, who acclaim this evening that in God we trust. Bless our two candidates, our benefactors, and those whom the L. Smith Foundation has been honored to serve for 7 decades. Guide us safely home, both this evening and for all eternity, through Christ our Lord. Amen.